show, Phil, but I'm going to mention Sue Fackler, a Regina mom who's in the hospital with vertebrae surgery. Hello and welcome to Sports Opinion, the weekly sports talk show on Channel 18. My name is Dirk Keller. This is Pat White. Over there on the far end is Earl Murphy, and we've got a very special guest here today. The 2011 Big Ten Track Tournament champion coach Larry Wieczorek is back with Sports Opinion. Larry, let's see. This is your 16th year as head coach of the track and field team. 25th year as cross-country coach. You're getting up there.
I am. I think I'm moving up the ranks. I think Steve Houghton is the longest serving coach now at Iowa. I might be right behind him, but I'm quite sure probably the oldest coach at the University of Iowa in terms of age at 65, now that Norm Parker's retired.
Well, that's a good thing.
You know.
It's a good thing.
Keep plugging away.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate you coming back.
My pleasure.
We asked Larry to come on the show today because the Iowa track team has got their first real event of 2012 coming up this Saturday at 2 p.m. at the Rec Center, and I need to say the old Rec Center. I've thrown a few people off by saying, yeah, meet us at the Rec Center, and then they go downtown. The old Rec Center, just across the street from Kinnick Stadium. Tell us a little bit about who's going to be there, what it's all about. It's called, help me out with the title, I forget.
I think we're calling it the New Year's Eve Classic. Or not the New Year's Eve, but the New Year's Classic.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
the inaugural New Year's Classic.
Yes. Yeah, we typically have a meet this weekend at home, but we just changed the name, maybe jazz it up a little bit.
Is there an admission for the meet?
There is no admission for this meet.
So it starts at 2 o'clock?
It start at 1.
Oh.
The final running events, or the preliminary running events start at 2, and the final running events start at 3. So.
What about the final for the field events?
And the field events will be ongoing. So
throughout the day?
Yes, throughout the day.
Okay.
Yep.
And what teams will be here this Saturday?
Well, we'll have Western Illinois, Truman State, Loyola of Chicago, and Bradley University.
Okay.
And actually,
men's and women's.
Men's and women's. Two of our assistants, former athletes and former volunteer coaches here. Matt Esche is an assistant coach at Bradley, and Jason Wakenight is a first-year assistant coach at Loyola. So we're grooming some youngsters getting out into the coaching ranks.
Oh, that's
great.
great.
And they'll be back here as coaches, so that'll be fun.
So you've got your own coaching tree branching out.
We do. I'm trying to compare myself a little bit to, humbly compare myself to Hayden Fry as far as getting people out in the coaching ranks. So we have quite a few out doing that.
Well, Kirk Ferentz has got his own coaching branches stretching out now. And
we should add in, I think I'm correct, admission is free. So people at the Iowa-Michigan basketball game, which starts at noon, can walk over to the rec center afterwards.
I think I'm going to promote that if they bring their tickets, they can get in free. We'll announce that at the game and see if we can't entice them to get something for free. And actually, if they got there, from track and field meets, as you know, run a long time, and so that's one of the difficulties in terms of entertaining because they're so long sometimes. But if a person got there at 4 o'clock, the next 2 hours, we're going to say we're going to rock the rec. We're going to see. One of our hopes is that the competition will be plenty good enough, but we really want to show off our men's and women's track and field team. To kick off the season, and so we're going to. I'm kind of promoting it myself to say, hey, let's tell our athletes, let's rock the rec. Let's people come in there, and for those last couple, but throughout the day, but those last couple hours, they can see a lot of great athletes and people putting on a good show, and that'd be my hope.
Well, targeting that time to come also makes parking a lot easier. Parking will probably be a little problematic around the basketball game.
Yes.
But if you waited until 3, it should be fairly easy.
But if you do go to the basketball game, walk right on over to the rec center. It'll be worth the time. if you've never seen a Big Ten track meet, this is a great opportunity. Not only because it's free, but you're going to get a chance to watch 13 returning All-Americans.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That is pretty impressive for any team.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yes.
I thought maybe we'd ask you to talk a little bit about those 13 All-Americans. I think you've got, 8 men and 5 women?
Yeah, we've got, I think things go up and down sometimes, but I mean, I think you could make a case right now. We have some of the most prominent, most successful athletes on the campus in track and field right now. And Justin Austin would be one of our marquee athletes, starting off with he was the Big Ten Athlete of the Year last year and the Big Ten Athlete of the Championship, the 200 being last year. So he's certainly a marquee athlete.
Yeah, and how did he do at the NCAA's?
He was actually ninth he was 4th indoors,
right,
9th outdoors, and then at the USA Championship, which includes all the pros and everybody, he was 5th in the 200.
Yeah.
So he was a little hurt at the outdoor national championship, but still, did very well. So he'll be one of the top. He has a chance to be a top 4 or 5 guy in the country this year.
Do you go with him? All the you mentioned the nationals. What was it called again?
Well, it's the U.S. We have the NCAA championship,
right,
which is the collegiate championship,
right,
and then after that, we have the USA championship, which includes all the professional athletes.
And you went with him to that?
Yes. And Coach Joey Woody is the sprint coach and directly coaches Justin. Does a great job with Justin.
City High boy.
Yeah.
Yes.
We got to get Joey on here someday.
Yes.
With you.
There's a big argument between who's the greatest athlete ever at City High. Steve Houghton makes a claim for that. I don't know if we can, and Joey Woody. So I don't know. Steve's my good friend, the tennis coach, but.
Well,
Tim Dwight, I don't know.
I'm just kidding. No, there's a lot of great ones.
Joey Woody did some pretty incredible things.
Steve was a good athlete.
Yes.
I'm old enough that I can lay claim to having coached Babe Ruth baseball when he was playing.
Is that right?
He was a heck
We'll
of
ask
a
him
ball
about
player.
that. He is a heck of an athlete.
How tall is he?
Steve? Steve is a 6'3". No, he's
No.
about 5'10". About
I was
5'10".
gonna say.
5'10", would you say? Yeah. Yeah. He plays bigger.
Talks a bigger game.
So, Larry, tell us a little bit more about your All-Americans.
Yes. We'll have Jeff Thody, and Jeff Thody will be running the 2-mile. He's an All-American miler. We'll have Eric Sawinski, who is a school record holder, an All-American in the 800, and one of our team captains. We'll have Troy Boole, triple jump, and triple jump is a big. He is the Big Ten champion and a top 5 athlete in the nation in the triple jump.
How many years do you have left?
He just has 1 year left. Yeah.
This year.
This year. Yep. And we won't see Matt Byers, who's the Big Ten champion in the javelin, because we don't throw that indoors.
Yeah.
But he's another Big Ten champion. We'll have Ethan Holmes. Ethan actually is a little bit banged up right now and may not compete this weekend. But Jordan Mullen.
Where's Ethan Holmes from?
Ethan is from
That's what I thought.
And he was an NCAA qualifier in the 4x4 relay, in the 110 hurdles outdoors, and the 400 hurdles outdoors. And then Jordan Mullen from Atlantic, Iowa. They're both juniors. And he was 9th at the indoor championships, nationals. He was 2nd in the Big Ten.
What's his event?
He is a hurdler. He is a hurdler as
from
well.
Atlantic, Iowa.
Atlantic, Iowa. So we've got two national
Atlantic,
class. Yep.
Who would that? Oh, Eddie Podolak.
Yes.
Yeah. How about that?
Yes.
Larry, would you mention the rest of your staff? You've talked about Joey Woody. I know John Raffensperger does some volunteer work, probably
Yes.
a lot of volunteer work.
Yes, he does a lot of volunteer work, and Coach Raff has been with us now this is his 6th year, I believe, since he retired. And again, how time flies. And Coach Raff, a Hall of Fame high school coach at City High, and what a great resource he is, what an asset he is to our program. Yes, he is. And then we have Coach Lane Anderson is our head women's coach, and then our assistant coaches are Christy Smith and Clive Roberts and Scott Capos and Joey Woody. So I think we have just a terrific coaching staff, and they work with the various specialty events.
Well, the results speak for themselves, Larry. Big Ten champions.
Yes.
I assume you haven't got tired of hearing that.
No. I told Murph before we started that will be for.
Yes, that's
I
right.
will never forget that, and we'll always cherish that, because championships are hard to come by, especially in a conference like the Big Ten Championship. People go their whole careers, you know, in sports and maybe never actually win a Big Ten. So I'm very grateful.
Well, just as a reminder, the last Big Ten championship that the Iowa track team won was in 1967.
Yes.
When Larry was a member of the track and field team.
Yes.
So that's how long it's been, and that's how hard it is to repeat. And what you and your assistants accomplished this past school year was nothing short of marvelous. And
you had a good mile relay team.
Yes, yes, and that's gonna, you know, that's gonna be an area that we always try to keep strong. Our mile relay, our 4x4 relay team, and you know that gives you an opportunity to spread those athletes out into other events and do well. And so, Coach Woody is a terrific coach in that area, and we would like to always make a mark at the national level in the 4x4.
Always talk about Gene Washington.
Yes.
He won the 100-yard dash.
Yes.
He was the fastest big man I've ever seen.
He was.
He was really
He was a
fast.
terrific athlete.
Oh.
And back in that day, Michigan State had, you know, tremendous dual sport athletes. They were, you know, the great football team that they had with Gene Washington, Clinton Jones, and others. And
Yes.
and many of those, 4 or 5 of those guys were track and field athletes as well.
Gene Washington, I believe, went on to play for the San Francisco 49ers.
That's right.
Yeah. Heck of an athlete.
It was an exciting track meet. That one, Kretz won it. So.
Well, you got your first opportunity to see the new 2012 season University of Iowa track and field team this Saturday at 2 p.m. at the old rec center just across the street from Kinnick Stadium. If you get a chance, stop by. Got a lot of super athletes. Now, we've talked about the returning All-Americans. To have 13 of them on one team is just mind, I think. But you've got a lot of new athletes, too, freshmen. And I'd like you to talk a little bit about them and let us know who's on campus and what to expect.
Yeah, we've got we have lots of reasons to be optimistic, I think. And as you follow sports and in all our sports, you know, things can get derailed in a hurry if a few things go wrong, but we certainly have reasons to be optimistic that we can be an outstanding track and field team again this year. One of our outstanding athletes is Brennan Davey, who is a blue chip 400 out of Indianola, Iowa. We have Kevin Lewis, who was a state cross country champion and a state record setter in the 2 mile from Ottumwa, Iowa, who ran cross country for us this fall and is looking real good. And one of our new athletes is Josh Larney, who will be joining us probably our second meet. Probably won't open up the first meet, but he's a transfer from Iowa Central Community College and is an outstanding long jumper and sprinter. So a semester addition for us.
And where did he grow up?
And he's from Ohio, from the state of Ohio, and came to Iowa Central Community College, was on an outstanding team there, and was a 24-plus long jumper for them, 24-foot-plus long jumper, and a pretty good sprinter too.
That's real.
So we think he'll be an asset to, you know, to our program.
Or why don't you back up just a little bit and tell the people who was on the mile relay team?
Yeah. Last year.
When Kretz.
Oh, when Kretz was coaching.
You remember that?
Yes, I sure do.
I don't remember.
You know, I
remember Mike Mondane.
Yep, I was there. I was on that team, of course, not the 4x4, but on that national championship. I was with those guys, the national champion 4x4 relay team, and there was Mike Mondane who anchored it. John Reimer out of Little George, Iowa, and he was an All-American 400 hurler as well. Then you had Carl Frazier out of Princeton, Iowa, and Fred Ferree out of Des Moines Roosevelt High School. So I think Coach Kretzmeyer was pretty proud of the fact that he had 3 Iowa guys on that team that won the national championship, and then Mike Mondane, who was from Chicago St. Ignatius High School, city
Did he end up
guy.
being a policeman?
He did. Yep, he was a policeman in Chicago. Now retired. Yeah,
Is that right?
yeah.
How do you
Did
remember
that team
that stuff?
run on the track that was right behind the field house? Between the field house
We
and the stadium?
ran on the track where the bubble is.
Right.
At that time, the track was
Bubble.
at the bubble, where the bubble is.
This
Yes.
is the 3rd outdoor track in my lifetime.
Yes.
Where was the other track?
Was between the field house and Kinnick Stadium.
Where the baseball stadium was?
Well, that was the second track over. It covered sort of the baseball stadium bubble.
I mean the
area.
old baseball stadium when it was over by the field house
No, it was
on
a
Melrose.
little north and west of the baseball stadium.
North and west, okay.
Yeah, the street didn't go through
Right.
at the time. It was open field right east of the stadium. Okay. Talk a little bit about track and field facilities. I've always been a little puzzled that the location of your outdoor track now doesn't seem to carry with it any locker room space, any office space.
Yeah, that's right. And
I've heard Gary Barta talk about the Jacobson building, once the football facilities are done, being repurposed, is the term he uses for Olympic sports. Does that include you guys?
Well, we are in the rec building, which
right.
Maybe we ought to change the term. Maybe I'll get Harry Ostrander to change that term from the rec building to the indoor track and field complex. Maybe that'd be a more identifiable.
It would be.
Sure.
But our locker rooms are located in the lower level of that. The old rec building, and they've been redone. I mean, they're beautiful. We've got the open wood lockers. We've got the flat screen TVs, and they're really classy looking.
What are they for? TVs?
Well, I think it's just you can from a practical standpoint, and you can review video with the kids right there in the locker room. But from their standpoint, is they can watch whatever they want to watch on TV. They can watch Sports Center and all that.
Befitting of a Big Ten champion.
Yes, and those facilities are important today for any sport. I mean, we've just renovated Carver Hawkeye Arena. Those things are important as you're trying to recruit athletes to your program. Kids, they want to get a great education, but when they see some of those things at other institutions, it makes a big. We just redid the indoor track, put a brand new surface called a Mondo surface on the indoor track. That is one of the best surfaces in the world.
Really?
The Olympic track will be made of that surface in London.
Just on the track itself, as
Yes.
opposed to the whole interior.
The whole oval and surrounding area. The infield's a little different, but it's also a Mondo surface. So that's excellent. Just redone this summer.
What's the difference? What's a Mondo surface?
Well, Mondo is the brand name, but the difference is rubber material made in a factory, and they bring in, and it's like a carpet. It's not a carpet material, but you lay it down like a carpet.
Oh.
It's in sheets. You can see it seamed together, and so they just lay it down. And our outdoor track is called a Binen, is the name of the product, and that's a poured polyurethane surface. So it's a solid poured surface. That also is one of the top really I think they're the top two surfaces in the world. And it was just redone a couple years before the Big Ten championship. So we like our outdoor track.
It was redone
facility.
before the floods too, if I remember right.
It was redone just after the floods.
Just after.
Okay. And it was a project all ready to be done. So the floods didn't damage anything. Or it was going to be done, and it was just a little bit delayed because of the flood. But
the rec building track is still flat as opposed to banked.
Yes, and that's a good question, Pat. Because nowadays we'll run our indoor Big Ten championship at Nebraska on a hydraulically banked surface. So
Is that a precondition to hosting the indoor meet?
No, not necessarily. But I think the bank tracks are probably they're faster than the flat 200-meter tracks, or there's oversized tracks they call them, and those might be indoors 300-meter tracks. So that one of the what slows you down. One of the things indoors is running the tighter turns that you'd have on a flat 200-meter track. So
how many Big Ten schools have
the only two that have the bank now are Penn State and Nebraska.
Oh.
And why did the Big Ten go to Nebraska for their?
Well, this was the first combined championship that we're having. Indoors, we've had men and women separate, and outdoors combined. But part of that reason was the venues were maybe a little bit smaller and a little more difficult to host, but that can be overcome sometime, But I think it was the facility right now that could host without any great difficulty. They can host the combined championship, and we're moving over a period of years. There was that incentive to move towards a combined indoor championship, like most of our meets are combined men and women.
Do you see? I still want to get back to Pat's question. Do you see a time when you'll have locker rooms down there at your outdoor field?
Well, I've got a lot of dreams, and don't necessarily always have to back that up, but I think I told you this quote one time from Roy Carver to Dan Gable, and Dan Gable told to me, "Don't let the lack of Jack stand in the way of what you need to do." So I don't have my Roy Carver, and I'm not Dan Gable, but I still have my dreams, and you always want to keep improving your facility, and so we need to add amenities around the track and field complex out there because I think that's important.
It is.
Our stands are left over from the field house.
Is that right?
And we don't have, restrooms or locker rooms out there. So, I think good coaches, want to keep improving their facilities. So last year we raised money, and the university bought that mobile video board that we had down there.
Mm-hmm.
We'll actually use that indoors. So that was a dream.
The university had to buy that?
Yeah, we bought that, and that's
Really?
Yes, and we've actually used it now. It can be moved anywhere,
Mm-hmm.
and they used it for soccer. They used it for a rowing event. Yeah, it is beautiful. It works well. I mean, you could.
Did you design it?
No, it's designed by Daktronics, and
But
they
you
came.
consulted.
I consulted with them. Yes, yes. And so it does add to the presentation
Oh, it does,
and the
surely
entertainment
does.
value of all those events. Really, I got good feedback from the coaches of those other sports that used it and said it really enhanced their event.
I'm sitting here thinking that last year's track meet, the championship the weather was really bad.
It was very bad. In fact, we hire a timing company to come in and time the meet. And he was from Alabama, and he does big meets around the country.
Yeah.
And he said it was number 2, worst conditions on Friday and Saturday to a meet that he had in the Southeast Conference somewhere one time.
Yeah, that's
He
what
said,
I
he said
remember
we
that.
ranked number 2 as the worst conditions. Then on Sunday, the final day,
Yeah.
the sun came out,
Yeah,
and the
yes.
sun was shining.
Yeah.
But we actually, our athletic department was rented a portable press. You see these events at golf outings or different types of events. They're something that they're like a little mobile condo almost.
Yeah.
You can bring in, and we needed it, Murph, because the weather conditions were so bad. Unfortunately, we did do that, and that's where the meet operations was conducted in there. So the timing, the scoring, the announcing, and basically the meet operations, which
It was
is
a beautiful setup.
it was. It was very well done. So maybe eventually that'd be something we'd like to get on a permanent basis out there.
Something needs to be done. I mean,
Yeah.
in those weather conditions, really about all the athletes had to meet or change were tents or buses or
Yes.
vans. And
Yes.
Yeah, it's not ideal for a Big Ten event, let alone a Big Ten tournament.
Well, you brought up a question about our coaching staff and our facilities, and one of the things I tell people right now, very sincerely, is this the best time ever to be at the University of Iowa in cross country and track and field. We have our own cross country course, the country course.
Isn't that amazing?
We've redone our indoor track and the locker rooms, and we've redone the outdoor track and field facility. And so I think our facilities are the best ever. The coaching staff I really think is the best ever. And we've got the best group of athletes maybe that we've ever had at one time at the University of Iowa. But we still need to keep working on those things. And my job as the head coach is to kind of be a spokesman and sort of be a person that's encouraging and pushing to keep our facilities for our student athletes.
Well, and we want to help you do that here today and anytime.
Thank you.
Now let's flash back to 1967.
Yes.
Where was the Big Ten track and field tournament held that year?
Well, it was held in Iowa City, coincidentally. Again, yes.
At
At
where the bubble is
where the
now.
bubble is now. That's where our track was.
I thought that was an excellent location. It sat down low. A lot of times the wind would go over and not really affect things down low.
Yes.
It was.
It was just
down
a
in a
nice
little
bowl down there. The stands were built into the side of the hill.
Well, another good thing about that location was it was right out the door of the indoor track complex and right out the door essentially of our locker room. So
that was there in
you could have had
67.
everything. That was
The
well,
rec
actually
center.
in '67 the rec center wasn't there. The rec center
that's
was
what I thought.
yeah. But when they bubble up, of course the rec building was in the early '70s, maybe '72, '71, something like that. I had left Iowa as an athlete by then, and it was very early '70s, I think, that the rec building was built. But
So where was your indoor?
in our indoor track
facility?
was in the field house.
Oh, sure.
Yeah,
sure.
you had the armory going out
Which
the
is
back.
why they called it the field house.
Yes, and you had we had everything in there. I mean, you had the baseball team would work out in the armory end, the soccer team, or not soccer, but the tennis team,
But in
football.
many
It was
respects,
all.
this was a terrific facility.
It was.
Yes. Yes.
We spent so much money, and we had all this discussion about a practice court. Well, the field house had one.
Yes.
It's still there, the North Gym.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, in some ways, of course, it was maybe ahead of its time in some ways. And,
Well, it was way ahead of its time.
Back in the day.
It aged, of course.
1910
The track site that you were talking about, as Raf can tell you, was the old U-High football field, too.
Oh, yeah.
That's right.
Oh, yeah.
You might not believe this, but that was also where Iowa football team used to practice
Yeah.
in the fall.
Yeah.
And I used to go over there and watch Niall Kinney. I watched him 3 or 4 times just on the sidelines, and I got a really good view of what he was capable of doing. And it was
All
fun.
those old pictures that you see of individual players that maybe Fred Kent and other.
Yeah.
Well, most of those that I think of are taken east of the stadium.
And that's what
That's
I'm
right.
saying.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Well, that was the first track. The second one over by the bubble
Right.
Oh, okay.
Right.
is where U-High used to
Yeah.
play.
Right. Yeah, I don't mean to confuse the viewer, but if you do look at those old pictures, a lot of the individual shots were taken just east of Kinnick Stadium, as Pat mentioned, where the team practiced. And
Even into the 50s and 60s,
Oh, yeah.
that was media day was always held there.
and that also held the baseball field at one time, as well as track and field. And I don't know if they. That's Patty McTaggart from our church, the singer. And okay, everybody sing. You like that, Joe? We got off track here. No pun intended. No pun intended. So, Larry, the Big Ten Outdoor Track and Field Championship was held in April of 2011.
middle of May.
I'm sorry.
Yep, middle of May.
What have you and the team done since then? Graduated some of the
Yep,
kids.
some of them graduated. One of the good, kind of the neat stories you see some of these pictures is Adam Hairston from Cedar Rapids, Kennedy, who graduated last year, was a scorer for us in the 800 and was a team leader. And Adam had pretty amazingly predicted at a all athletic staff meeting. He was a guest speaker as representing the student athletes. He predicted that on May 15th. He didn't know where they were going to be. And this was back in September of last year, that he would be graduating on Saturday, and on Sunday he would be holding up the Big Ten championship trophy above his head. And there's a picture of him with his mortarboard on and holding the Big Ten championship trophy. So a lot of amazing things, happened. And so some of them have graduated, have gone on, and to real life. And I used to say, everyone else grows up, only the coach stays in Never Never Land. And keeps doing the same thing. But many of the kids, went on to the national championships and took a break in the summer and resumed training.
What did the kids do? What do you and the kids do in the fall?
Well, of course, I'm busy with the cross-country team, so we've got them, competing in the fall. And then we have our fall track program, which is very important these days, for the off-season. Well, any athletes, that off-season time when they're training and getting ready for the season. So, you ought to start, when you start in January, it's not like getting in shape or anything like that. You ought to start at a pretty high level and be ready to go. So nowadays that fall with my assistant coaches, that's a real important time to get our new kids, adjusted to being at Iowa and everybody else training for another good season.
So now we're not the middle, but near the end of the winter break. Is that what we call it? Winter break, week break between semesters. Do most of the kids on the track and field team and cross country team stay in town and train?
Well, a lot of them do nowadays. They'll go home for the holidays after the break, and then they'll start drifting back into town. It's kind of like even in the summer now, more and more kids will go home for a bit, and then they're back in Iowa City. I think they've got their apartments, and maybe their parents are ready to throw them out of the house, and they want to get them back to Iowa City anyway after. And this is where their life is. So a lot of our kids, come back and do train, and they've got the facilities here to train. So a lot of them will, but then again, we had everybody reporting back this past Sunday to get ready to go full go. So,
Larry, almost every sport we talk about, we hear a reference to strength and conditioning program. Do you have specialized training and staff, or do you handle that with your coaching staff?
Well, we could actually do it either way because my assistants are outstanding strength coaches in their own right. But we have a great strength and conditioning staff here at the University of Iowa. So every team has a strength and conditioning coach that works, you know.
Who is that for your?
And then we've got under Bill Maxwell, you know, we've got he has his assistants working, you know, with us.
Where do the kids work?
And we work at the. We have a nice weight room. We remodeled the indoor track complex at the rec building. We have right outside our locker room door. We have a weight room, but we are also using the new large weight room this fall in Carver Hawkeye Arena. So that has really enhanced the capabilities of our coaching staff to come over there and use that big new weight room. That really improved things.
When these teams come in Saturday, are there locker room facilities upstairs in the rec center that they'll use?
No, they will come in and they'll be, you know, of course we're at the indoor track, so they'll come over dressed to compete, and you know they have showers there that they can use, you know, in the visitors area, but we don't have a visitors locker room per se in the indoor track for them. So they'll change at their hotels.
In the Big Ten?
Yeah, I think it's pretty normal. Yeah.
So I'm curious, when you were on the track and field team in '67, well, throughout your time as a student at Iowa, you went to all the other Big Ten schools and ran on their tracks. Are any of those schools using the same track today that they were when you were a student athlete?
Most of them have upgraded in one way, you know, or another. And interesting, when I was coming out of high school and being recruited, I don't think the facilities were that much different or that big of a deal,
right,
as they are today. You know, everything was better than what I had, so you know, I think that was, you know, more level playing field in that regard. But nowadays, facilities have changed so much, and somebody might have a stadium that's an outdoor stadium capable of hosting the NCAA championships, and others might be a little more rudimentary than that. But Minnesota is in their field house still. Now they've totally upgraded the facility, but it's still the old building, like our old field house. But they put, you know, all the modern amenities, a new track, like ours, actually, our indoor track. But they ain't building.
Same building as basketball and hockey?
Well, no, they're across the street. They're at the I think they might call it the field house still, but they're across from Williams Arena for basketball at Minnesota, and then hockey is down the street, but they're all kind of in that same area. But I'm trying to think who else. Wisconsin, new track facility inside, but they're in the same building. I don't know if they call it the shell or what but it's right, you know, next to their football stadium and their hockey rink.
What about Northwestern?
Northwestern no longer has track and field.
Oh, that's right.
So of the 12 schools, they're the only one that does not have, you know.
And I think they still have the outdoor track at their football
stadium. Well, they
stadium.
actually removed the track.
Did they?
One of my first years back at Iowa was it might have been the spring of '85 as a coach. They actually hosted the outdoor championships, and then when they started having success there in football with when they went to the Rose Bowl and whatnot, they removed they dropped track first, and track and field, and then they removed the track from Dyke Stadium, and I suppose to get more seats or get them closer. I'm not sure.
There was a gap, as you would expect.
I'm trying to think who else.
Ohio State took theirs out of the football stadium finally. What about? I know Penn State wasn't a member of the Big Ten back then. What are their facilities like?
And their facilities they have one of the best indoor track complexes, and their outdoor track is located. You know, their outdoor track is probably very similar to ours, but it's right below their indoor track complex, and they built a brand new building with a hydraulically banked track. So it's, in that regard, it's very good, you know. And they spent a lot of money to build that facility, and it would have been, you know, the nice thing is when there is inclement weather, which when we were there for a Big Ten championship, there was inclement weather. You could be in the indoor track and just ready to walk back out to the outdoor track. So that was an up.
That sounds nice.
Illinois is still in there. You know, they have a new outdoor track. But it's probably not new anymore. They're across the street from Huff Gym, and they're in a building called the Armory.
Oh, sure.
And that is actually where I ran when I was in school. But again, a new modern track in there, and they built a track outside the stadium. When I was in high school, running in Illinois in high school, the track was in the stadium, in the football stadium, till probably the mid-'70s. They hosted a couple national champs there outdoors, and then they moved out and moved down the street and built a new track complex there.
I have a fondness for history, and when I went to Ohio State to see a football game, I couldn't help but think this is where Jesse Owens ran.
Yeah, that's pretty neat.
And
Yes.
I can remember my dad telling me as a kid when we'd go to an Illinois game that this is where he would mention Jesse Owens and I'm drawing some of the other Olympic heroes of the day. But that added a lot of history to the football stadiums and for me.
Yes.
And it sounds like that's kind of a bygone era.
Well, they were one of the last to move out of the football stadium, and they held a state meet there, the high school state meet and everything. But I'm trying to think, maybe it was 1998, I think, that they moved. We held the Big Ten championship outdoors there in '98. Our team, Tim Dwight was actually on that team, and our team finished third in the Big Ten championship. It was really a good meet for us. And then I think the following year they built. Down the street, they built a new track complex, the Jesse Owens Track Complex, and it's a good one. They built a stadium, and of course they host the state championship there, in high school championship. So, and it's also their soccer stadium. So they got a real nice stadium, a lot of the amenities, and they also, I'm sure, wanted to honor and please the Owens family and honor Jesse Owens by building a very nice track stadium after they moved out.
Yeah,
and
the statue was really beautiful.
Yes.
Jesse.
Yes, and that is being knowing the history and the sense of history and what you're part of, it makes it so special to be in the Big Ten championship. My senior year, I won the 2-mile at Ohio State, and Jesse Owens presented the awards.
No way.
Yeah, so that was pretty neat. Yeah,
really?
Yes.
Do you have a photo?
I threw my shopping bags where my pictures are and see if I have anything. I can't recall if I have a picture of my.
You ought to ask Phil Hattie.
You mentioned Coach Kretzmeyer, and Coach Kretzmeyer ran against Jesse Owens.
Yes, I know.
And I do have a picture of Coach Kretzmeyer running the hurdles in a Big Ten championship against Jesse Owens.
Who won?
And I think Coach Kretzmeyer got a bad start that day, and I think Jesse was able to slip by him.
Well, Kretz was dairy in his own right.
Yes.
And I know last time you were on the show, I put you on the spot, and I said, "You got any good Kretz stories?" And I should have asked you that to prepare ahead of time this time.
With enough time, I could probably think of a million of them. Kretz was a great storyteller and a wonderful man, and I've been really lucky in my.
Tell you a story about Kretz. He used to smoke a cigarette once in a while, and he always smoked it in the east corner of the rec building. And you had a meet, and I was sitting there, and Kretz was lighting up. And I went down to Phil, and I said, "Why don't you say Kretz put out that cigarette?" And Phil did that. Kretz looking all over for me. So, we shared all the laughs together.
Yes, I know you were good friends.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Well,
I'm going to ask if there are recruiting aspects to your job that are unique to track and field. Did you have to go farther?
Well, we probably like everyone else, we try to recruit in-state, and we've been very fortunate to get some good in-state athletes and have good in-state athletes on our team right now. And in fact, last year from Strawberry Point, Iowa, Matt Bance, on Friday, first day of the championship, he gets fourth in the hammer throw. That's our first points on the board. And Steve out of Ottawa, Iowa, West Monona High School, he's the anchorman of the 4x4, the very final runner across the finish line. And when he crossed, we were Big Ten champs. So 2 Iowa kids, and then plenty of Iowa kids in between. But then,
it just thrills me. It really does.
But there's part of the interesting story there is Iowa High School doesn't throw the hammer.
Yeah,
that's right.
So how did you decide that was a venue that he ought to go
Well,
into?
I have a great throws coach in Scott Capos. And Scott is a hammer throw coach and all the throwing events. And so Scott is very good at identifying somebody that was a thrower in high school, and Matt was a shot putter and discus thrower, state champion in his class. And Scott said, "Hey, this is a kid that could develop in this area besides the other throws." So Scott has done a great
So he
job
does all three?
of coaching. Yes, of coaching those kids up, and then interestingly, also, we don't have the triple jump in the state, which is very unusual not to have the triple jump. Most everybody does, and Iowa does. We have the Big Ten triple jump champion, yeah,
And
Troy
javelin.
Doris, and we don't have the javelin in the state. And so we had the Big Ten champion in the javelin. So you have to go a little farther afield for some of those events. And so, like everyone else in the recruiting process, we're going to try to get kids from our home state first, and then you kind of go out, and I think in concentric circles going a little bit further out. And proximity to home is always a factor, and kid making up his mind. And so we recruit Illinois a lot and the surrounding states, and then try to go coast to coast. Chris Barton was from Southern California, and he was one of our members. He graduated last year, was on our 4x4 team. And in the past, we've had John Hickey, who was a Big Ten champion. He wasn't on our team last year, but he was a Big Ten champion in the shot several times. He's from New York City. So
And your scholarship situation is what? How many?
Well,
And
we have-
I assume you apportion them.
we do. We have
9.9?
we have 12.6.
12.6.
And when you
Where
think
does that
about that,
number come from?
well, I think originally in the
Question.
history there was no limit. You could give whatever you wanted to a particular institution way back when. Maybe when I was in school in the 60s. Then I think it went to 24 for track and field, for men's track and field. Then when I came to Iowa in 1984, it was already cut down to 14. And then, if my memory is correct, at that time the NCAA came in and it did a 10% across the board cut in all sports. So football went down to 85, and so Iowa got, or not Iowa, but track and field got cut to the odd number of
14,
12.6. And
And that's for men and women.
and women have 18.
That's
Oh.
separate from cross country.
No, cross country has none. Cross country actually
Has to come within that 12.6.
you're within the 12.6. So whatever you decide,
Oof.
it's kind of people don't understand sometimes that a program might decide, boy, I want to have distance runners, and we're going to have a cross country program, and we're going to be at the national level and contend there, and they may put a ton in the distance running area, in the cross country area. And you're competing against teams that could have way more scholarships than you do, and we're trying to be trying to be and are a balanced program, where we have people across all the outdoor 21 events. And as a head coach, it's one of your biggest challenges, is to spread those scholarships out, keep your assistants happy.
How many athletes altogether receive some scholarship assistance?
I think
currently?
we'll have 44 on our men's roster, and probably maybe half have that, have scholarship. In the scholarship, we might have kids on books, and we have a very, very few on full scholarships.
I didn't realize that.
Here's another thing people don't realize. That I always contend that people follow college sports, and what they really mean, college sports, is what they read in USA Today about men's football and basketball, primarily. And, all those kids that, for the most part, they're on full scholarships. 85 and 12 or 13 in basketball, whatever that is. But in ours, we might have a kid running 90 miles a week that's an engineering student, doing a great job for your team, and getting no scholarship money. A lot of and we recruit walk-on or non-scholarship athletes in track and field just as hard as we do scholarship athletes, because, again, a Stephen Willie, who eventually became an All-American and a Big Ten champion and was our anchor man last year as a senior of that relay team, he came as a non-scholarship athlete. And, he developed, he got great coaching by Coach Woody, and but we thought, so you're recruiting good athletes, but you may be in a position because of that small pie of 12.6 that you can't give anybody a scholarship.
How many of those 44 will actually compete on Saturday?
That's a good question. And at home, we have an unlimited, you can compete anybody on your roster. On the road, indoors, you're allowed to travel 32 within the Big Ten.
Men and women.
32 men and 32 women.
Oh, okay.
And outdoors, you're allowed to travel 34. 34 men, 34 women.
What are the difference?
Just for outdoors, you have a few more events, and they let you travel a few more kids.
Javelin.
And different conferences have different rules, but that's the Big Ten, rule as far as travel.
How much flexibility do you have minute by minute during a meet to make substitutions or changes?
Generally, once the meet starts, you're set. So, usually we might have a Wednesday deadline on our entries, typically to make scratches, but typically you wouldn't be allowed to make additions when you get to the meet. So your lineup is set, Now you could scratch somebody out of the event, but
And replace them.
and in a relay, you can put anybody on the relay up until a few minutes before the start of the relay. But that's basically your only
But
flexibility.
say the 200 meter, if somebody pulls a hamstring warming up that morning, you can't substitute.
You wouldn't substitute anybody in there. Yep, typically you would not be allowed
Wow.
to substitute anybody.
In case you just tuned in, we're visiting with Larry Wieczorek, the track and field and cross-country coach here at the University of Iowa. And I interrupted you, Larry, but I want to make sure if somebody tunes in, they know who we're talking to.
Yes. The scholarship, I think, thing is oftentimes a misunderstood, thing. A lot of the general public might think, hey, these athletes, they're coddled, and
Yeah.
they all got scholarships and full scholarships. And a lot of times the kids are, struggling to make ends meet, and they're working really hard and contributing, and they don't have any scholarship money.
The only two is football and
Basketball.
basketball.
Well, various sports, in the men's and women's have. I think football and basketball on the men's side are the only two that give all full scholarships. And we certainly could give all full scholarships if we wanted to, but if you only have 12.6 and you'd cut your squad. Hopefully, you'd have studs.
Well, and it makes it important to recruit as many kids from Iowa as you can
Yeah.
because of the difference in tuition costs for
That's
in-state and
That's a very
out-of-state.
good point, Dirk. If you can get the in-state kid and you gave him a small scholarship, well, okay, then that could have a big impact on how much they're paying. Then if you gave, and we think of it typically in terms of a percentage. So once you've given 100% of a scholarship, then that's one. Say if we gave an in-state athlete a tuition scholarship, well, that would be about 47% of the cost. It's about, say, what is it, about $9,000 or $8,000 something for an in-state kid. Well, out-of-state, it's $25,000 for tuition, and then that out-of-state student tuition, you've given about 72% of a full scholarship. So if you can see, hey, we're going to give the in-state kid tuition and the out-of-state kid tuition, we've given them both essentially the same scholarship, but from our standpoint, the percentage that you'd have, you'd have that remainder, to give to another athlete. So when you're going out of state, to make it cost effective for them to come, chances are you're giving them a little more money.
When are you talking to your prospects about fractional scholarships? You get somebody who says, well, Arkansas Central is offered me half a scholarship, and that's equal to X dollars.
Yes.
Can you come up?
Yeah, you do have those conversations sometimes, and you try not to get into bidding wars. But if you're a full scholarship sport, you're really just identifying, do you want that athlete?
Right.
You're not in a bidding war. Sometimes part of it is, well, maybe you have other needs and you can't give quite so much money, or you don't even have the money in the program to give much more than what you're offering. And so sometimes you do get into those bidding wars. And another factor in how much you can give, we look, can this athlete score at the Big Ten track championships? That's kind of what we're thinking when we're given a scholarship. And so certain conferences that you might recruit against, they're not quite as tough as the Big Ten is. The Big Ten, the Southeast, the Pac-12. There's other lesser conferences that athlete might be immediately valuable to them. Let's say if you're competing in the Missouri Valley, well, maybe that athlete can come in and score right away. And so if they give them a scholarship, they know they're going to get a return on their money. When you start looking at the Big Ten results, you think, ooh, we like this person, but it's going to take them a while to score, maybe. And they may wind up being great. But so sometimes you're competing against little different situations there.
Is that the toughest part of your job, is to divvy up who?
Well, I think it certainly is it's a difficult part of it. It sure is. I think it's a tough, because you want to be fair to kids as much as you can, and you'd like to reward kids in the program if you can, and we try to do that. So if somebody comes in as a non-scholarship or a low scholarship, we will try to, if they produce here, then we try to take them up the next year if we can, and reward them before we go out and get somebody else. So juggling that small amount of money is a challenge.
I have a question about non-track specific, but it's probably the most frequent question that sports fans in this community are asking right now. Talk about the difference between team rules, what keeps getting referred to as the student-athlete code of conduct, and the code of student life, and how they work and how you have to work within them.
Yeah, and you may have your own team rules well. That
and those are discretionary with you.
Yes, and then we put those on file with the athletic department, so the athletic director and associate athletic directors know what our particular team rules are, and then the code of conduct could be, any number of, violations that are for the entire university.
It's department-wide.
That's department-wide.
It's not a
yes, yeah.
specific one for different sports.
Yes,
every
that's
athlete
correct.
On whether scholarship or not has to follow that.
That's correct for the code of conduct.
And it has an internal administrative procedure, hearings, evidence.
Yes, that's right.
But it's separate from the university's code of student life.
Well, those are all related. Those are all tied in
how do they relate?
Together. The athletic code of conduct would be related to the based on the code the university conduct as well. Because they are students.
It has its own administrative structure.
Yes.
Totally independent from the athletic department.
Yes. And those are challenges because kids are going to make mistakes, and things do happen. And one of my team rules, and I stole this from somebody else, another coach, and it's don't do anything detrimental to yourself. That's number one, because that's the only team rule for this particular team. And if you do detrimental to yourself, it's not only going to be detrimental to you, but it's going to be detrimental to your family, your team, your university. And so if you think about that, how that impacts going out wider than just yourself. And sometimes we see that somebody's done something, and we've had athletes on our team that have done something that maybe you got ineligible, or maybe you got in trouble downtown, and that took you away from the team. The other thing I say is protect each other on and off the field. I emphasize this to the kids, and what does that mean? Well, it could be, hey, train hard so that when you go on the field, you can compete, and you're ready to help this, just like at the Big Ten championship, you're all ready to go out there and help each other win. But it also means you might see someone, a positive peer pressure. You may know that somebody's not going to class. I only have 2 ears and 2 eyes, and I may not be aware of a problem that somebody's having, or somebody might be partying too much, or somebody might not be, living the best life that they could. And if we can help them, and if you can help them as a student athlete, as a teammate, that's another way of protecting.
You have team captains?
We do have team captains. This year we've through the years we've had good leadership, and when you do have good leadership from the peers, I think that's really a big help. And Eric Sawinski and Troy Doris are our co-captains this year.
For men?
For men. Yeah.
What about women?
And I can't remember off the top of my head who our women's captains are.
Okay.
Yeah.
You pick them?
And we do it. This is something that I stole this idea from somebody, and obviously I'm more directly responsible for with the men, and so through the years that's kind of how I've done it. But what I've done with the picking the captains is it's we get feedback from the students. So we'll vote on our top 3, and then so this way I found, and then we'll use their vote and then our coaching staff thoughts to select the captains. And typically we're on age. Sometimes the coaches have just picked the captains. And then, one time I kind of got burned, and it was a good kid, but the kids felt, coach, this probably shouldn't have been our captain, And even though he was a good kid, so then we put in this instrument where you vote. Let's vote on your top 3. We count up the votes, and then that way, if we think so and so should be a team captain, and he's not doesn't jive with what the team thinks. So that's why it's not a direct vote, because sometimes it can be a popularity contest. So their input and our judgment. And I think that's worked out very well.
Larry, who's going to be the challenger for the Big Ten title this year?
Well, I think we can be contenders once again. But I think interesting. We were just yesterday. The preseason poll came out, and we're ranked 16th nationally. Our men's program was ranked 16th nationally in the time. And there's over 300 Division I teams in track and field.
Are you feeling pressure?
Well, it's a good kind of pressure. We are optimistic, but also I'd say there's 6 teams, men's teams from the Big Ten, that are in the top 25 in the country, and we're not ranked number 1. So, but I do feel, and we've talked about this with our team, we can be a better track and field team than we were last year. So that's kind of our process. What can we focus on? We can focus on being a better team than we were last year. We can see those results ourselves.
So who's preseason number one? Minnesota. Let me guess.
Well, Minnesota and Wisconsin,
Yeah.
and you can have Indiana and
Indiana,
Ohio,
I think.
and Nebraska brings in a new element because they have been a national power for many years in track and field, and so they've been a great conference team, in the Big 12, and so they're gonna stir the pot up quite a bit. So.
Well,
I remember last year that they kept talking about Indiana.
Yes.
They were rising, and they were started out near the bottom, and they were fourth.
And well, they actually finished second indoors. We were fourth indoors.
Okay.
And they were going to be a contender outdoors. So, with good teams, a big part of it is can you keep your people healthy? Can you keep the people you're counting on? Can you get them to the starting line? At the indoor championships and the outdoor championships. So they are a very good team. The Big Ten is a good track. It's a good athletic conference, obviously, in everything, and in track, no exception. It's a tough conference, and you could slip pretty quickly, even though you're pretty good, and all of a sudden, somebody doesn't compete, and somebody's hurt, and all of a sudden, several teams are by you. So, but again, we have. Every year, you couldn't say this, but hey, maybe we want to be a top 5 team. Maybe we want to be a 7th place team, because that's what's a realistic challenge. But this year, we can be a contender again if we keep everybody healthy, everybody on the straight, and everybody focused. But
Well,
each year it's a new team. So even though we have a lot of returners,
Where's Wisconsin?
they will be they'll be contenders. Yes, they've been. They and Minnesota have won probably in recent years the most, and so they're not going to be. They're going to be right there again. They're going to be loaded and.
Well, it all starts Saturday at 2
Yes.
p.m. at the Rec Center. So get out there either after the men's basketball game or before the men's basketball game gets underway. Rec Center this Saturday at 2 p.m.
Good deal, Dirk.
Before we take off, I did want to mention a couple things. We just learned about the death of former Hawkeye assistant football coach Joe Philbin's son, Greg, 21 years old, drowned up in, what town was it? Oshkosh. I think a lot of us remember going to the Johnson County I-Club breakfast on Friday morning before home football games and seeing that pretty large Philbin family sitting at one table, all dressed to the nines. Those boys, there were a lot of boys. I remember at least 4 or 5 of them. There's 6 total kids. And those kids were well behaved. And, Joe Philbin is being mentioned as a potential head coach for the Miami Dolphins. He was interviewed by the Kansas City Chiefs. He's with the defending Super Bowl champion Green Bay Packers and has been since he left Iowa. He's held in high regard by a lot of people. And I know it saddens here when we learned of the young man's passing. And our thoughts and prayers are with the Philbin family, as I think all Hawkeye fans are. Also just wanted to mention a get well soon to a friend of mine, Sue Fackler, who is the mother of a couple of Regina basketball players and works over at Dirk Keller. She's been at Mercy Hospital since Sunday, and she's been in quite a bit of pain with her back. And Sue, we just want to wish you the best and get out of the hospital and get well, okay? There have been a lot of other, even more negative things going on in the world of Hawkeye football and basketball and wrestling, but we're going to save that for next week. We've just been honored to have Larry Wieczorek back. Larry is the longtime head track and field coach as well as cross-country coach here at the University of Iowa, defending Big Ten champs, about to renew their defense of the title this Saturday, 2 p.m. at the Old Rec Center across from Kinniam. Be there if you can. Larry, thanks for being
Thank
here
you, Dirk.
today.
I always appreciate the invitation.
Oh,
Thank you.
you're welcome. On behalf of Pat White and Earl Murphy and even Joe Murphy behind the camera, I'm Dirk Keller, thanking you for watching Sports Opinion every Wednesday night on Channel 18 at 7 p.m. and every Sunday night at 6 p.m. And remember this, folks, either you're a Hawk or you're not. Go Hawks and rock the Rec Center Saturday for the Iowa track and field team.